Hi, this is Mohammed again with the part 7 of the tutorial. Today we will try to add an edit, add, and a delete option to complete this entire module. Okay, let's get going. So first we're going to do is go to that page that we're on, which is index.html, this page right here, and we're going to try to add an edit option, and then we're going to try to add an add option at the same time. So going back to the table header, so let's say the very first column there, we're going to go ahead and call that a maintain, and we're going to call that, and we're going to add an edit option. So the text for now, you can just put it here because it's going to be like a link. So the header link, we're going to try to make it an add, let's say. So it would be looking something like this. But of course, as I mentioned, that we cannot just put hard code the text, so it's better to put a text identifier, and we're going to put that in the message properties. So copy paste that. Let's call that an add. Well, small case would be better, and then we're going to go to message properties, and let's go ahead and add this. Okay. Then this is, of course, we'll add another column that would be here. So what happens is, whatever the ID is, what's supposed to happen, we're actually supposed to call this header. That I didn't do last time, because that kind of has to match with the ID of the column. So it'll be headers, and call that headers, and we're going to call that, of course, maintain. And then this one, we have to create a link, and we're going to come back to that. So for now, let's just delete this, and inside we should call that edit, but of course we don't want to hard code it, so we're going to do something like this, that, and put it in here. Oops, not there. Put it in here and call that edit. Now go back here to this edit equals edit, edit. Okay. Now this is supposed to be a link, so we need to add a link, meaning an anchor object like that, and a better approach would be put this inside the th text. That's what the time loops allow us to put that in there like that, and then put it in here. And similarly, what we're going to do is, let's just copy exactly this and put that in here like this, and this should be called edit. Alright, let's see how it looks. So basically I just added one more column. The header of the column basically is going to say add with the link, and we have not defined the link yet, and each of the row would have an edit. And actually, while we're there, let's add one for delete as well. So we will call that a delete, and let's call that a delete. It would be something similar to this, so I should copy that, but anyway. Okay, let's delete that and put that in here, and it should be called something like a delete. And oh no, sorry, I think that would not be a link. So this would be, let's put it in here. So this would be td headers and td here. That would be the link. This would just be the header. So I need to make that little change there, and like that. So this is a header, and we have not defined the link yet for the row. So this is going to be just the header. This is just going to be the header. The header itself would be called add with the link. So by clicking on that, we will be able to add. And this is going to be the edit link for each of the rows, and this is the delete link for each of the rows. So let's go ahead, and I think we did add and edit. Let's add the delete identifier too. Let's see how it looks. If I go back to the page now and refresh, and yeah, it doesn't show the link, but you can kind of see it. There's the link right there, and there will be edit, and then there will be delete. So we're going to turn that to a link, of course. Alright, so first of all, let's see this. Let's put an href. So this would be an href, and we need to put something. Now, TimeLift allows us to put some dynamic link that we would be implementing. So I would say that for add, our link would look something like this. Just edit, let's say, and then this we're just going to pass -1. That would define that this is going to be an add. Now this is hard coding. Instead of hard coding, now since we put TimeLift href, we can use TimeLift's dynamic link definition by doing that. Okay, it takes care of that, and then we can copy this. I'm going to paste it in here, and for each of the edits, what we're going to do is we're just going to pass we need to concatenate this, so let's put a plus here, and we're going to pass the row we are on, so it would be v dot name. So a link would be something like edit slash whatever the name of the vaccine tab we're trying to edit. Similarly, let's copy this, and we're going to make our delete. So delete would be similarly, but we're just going to call it delete slash whatever the thing that we're trying to delete. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so there you go. We got our link. So it's add. Add is gonna, if you look at the bottom left corner of the screen, you'll see that it says edit slash -1, and for this one it has the COVID-19 Ebola edit. So all of this links looks correct now, and the delete says a delete with the same identifier. So that seems to be okay. So now let's go ahead and implement this. The first thing we're going to do is, so as soon as someone clicks on add or edit, they're going to go a link like this, something like this. So let's try to implement that, and then link would be in a controller. So we're going to go back to the controller right here, and so that we could minimize the code, I'm just going to copy that method and paste it right here. And the thing that we're trying to implement is, of course, edit. So because that's what's going to get called, edit, and then slash. We're also going to pass something with it, right? So that would be our parameter. So that would be, we're going to call that, that's a name. So we also need to pass something. That would be a variable, and you can pass that. Let's call that thing and edit. And we also need to know that variable. We need to let's first add the path variable, which is path variable, and we're just calling that path variable up there name, and that would be a string name. Let's go ahead and put that piece. So this name has to correspond with this, but we can call this anything we want. So this will have whatever is passed via this. Okay, now that we have our path variable in there, let's try to find out what we can do with this. So first of all, okay, we're gonna need something like this, but not that exactly. The first thing we're going to do is let's find out if this is an add or an edit. So the way we're going to do it, let's just put a Boolean value like is add, let's say, but that equals to say that, hey, if we happens to get a -1 as a name, and that if that happens to be equals to name, then that would be add. Okay, and based on that we're gonna get what we need to get. So we need to set the attribute as basically if there's an edit, we need to fetch the data for that specific vaccine type and then set it into the model. So let's just call that vaccine type. There will be only one row, and this will be conditional statement. So we're going to say basically is add question mark. So if it's an add, all we're going to set is a new vaccine type. As simple as that. Since we already have that ORM. Otherwise, we need to get it from the database, right? So we have this repository here, and we can directly get that by saying that dot find by ID. That's a built-in method. This one, and of course our ID is nothing but our name. So we're passing that, and you also have to put, once we get it, we have to call the get method to get the actual row. So that's about it, and let's import this guy. Okay, here we go. And that's about it. So that's basically what we need to do. So whenever there's an add, we just saying it's going to be empty vaccine type null, and then otherwise go ahead and get the vaccine type from the database for that specific vaccine type name. Alright, and then we're going to return somewhere else because this has to be in like a new page. So let's call that page maintain instead of add, because it's going to do add and edit both. Maintain, okay? So now we are going to have to go to the maintain page. So let's go to the maintain page. Now we don't have it, so what I'm going to do is create one. The best way to do it right now is, since there's a lot of stuff that it's going to share, which is the top portion of the menu. So I'm just going to go ahead and say file, save as, and call that maintain. Say okay. And of course most of this thing are going to be the same. Well, our header is going to change. We're not going to call that, well, vaccine type, but I think a more appropriate header should be probably maintain vaccine type. So let's use that to create our message here. So it's going to be something like this, but we'll say in our vaccine types is to maintain. Right, that would be the header. Alright, and then we're not going to have any of these. Of course, it's not going to be table or list or anything like that. So we're going to keep that as, we're going to have to get rid of all of these. All of this table, and we also don't need that script. Alright, so here what we're going to have is we're just going to have a simple form. And that form would be, let's have an ID of vaccine type form, let's say, just for the convention. And then that form would also have, let's say, an action, and we're going to use, not hard-coded, we're going to use an action with a th tag, and let's put a dynamic URL in there, and let's say we're just going to call the edit as soon as the form is submitted. And then this is the beauty of the time leaf, and we are going to say that this form will be corresponding to the object that we are passing, which we pass through our model object, if you remember, would be vaccine type. So that was our model attribute that we passed. And of course it would be a method post. There you go, that's our form. Of course, inside a form, it's always a good idea to add a field set, basically to combine your field. F-I-E-L-D, so. Okay, and then the very first thing is, let's say that we're going to have a nice header of the form. So we're going to have a div with the class, call the row, and that would be called, let's say, form header. And of course we want whatever is in there, justify content center. Let's say we actually don't want any padding anyway, so we're going to put this as well. py-0, that means there's no padding in the y-axis, so 0 padding, and then there's no margin as well in the y-axis, 0 margin, dash 0. And then we need a nice background, so we're going to use the alert, built-in alert that Bootstrap has. So we're going to say alert primary. That's the color we want. And let's say we want a little border, nice border, and how the border should look like, it would be the border primary as well. Okay, that's about it, and that's it. And of course there will be only one column, so we can actually put the column right here if we have to. So that would be a form header, and then let's just put the actual header. Let's call that an h3 for header. That would be th text, and we're gonna call the exact same thing as this guy. Okay, and that should be it. That's our header. All right. Then let's get to our actual form, div, and then this div is of course is going to be something similar, so let's just copy. We probably have to, not going to do most of it. So definitely going to be a class row, but we don't want the column, it's not any of that stuff, and we're just going to say it would be an alert, and it would be alert primary, border primary. Actually, I took out too much, so column, leave it there as well. Okay, so that is there, and then inside that, then we're going to have each of the form is its own section, let's say. And this is going to be in one row, and I'm just going to copy this because everything is going to be center justified there, and in there there will be probably two rows. So one is, let's put one div. Here we're going to put our fields, and we're going to put a second one where we're going to put our button as another row. Alright. So inside this field, in this div, this is going to be a class, and let's say this will occupy form group true, let's say. And the next one would be, let's say, the rest of it, which is the 9. So typically in Bootstrap, in the entire row has about 12 columns, so that's how you spread it out. So here I'm going to put the name, and there I'm going to put the description. So first, obviously it's good to start with the level, class equals, and I'm going to use all Bootstrap stuff, control level, and it's always good to use a for that would be connected with the ID, and let's put th text. I think we already have that defined in our text called name. And that goes our level, and then let's kind of add the same thing here, but this level is going to be called description. So this would be descr, and then let's start putting some more stuff in here. So it'll be our input, and of course the input class is always going to be form control. And then that would be type text. And it's a good idea to put a placeholder so that it shows what that is. And here I'm going to use the th so that I could put stuff like this. And this is going to be the name. And then let's say this is a required field, and we're going to connect that with the th field where we said that this entire form is tied to this object. So we're going to say that this is tied with the way you assign an object of an attribute of that object is by saying star. This is the name of the attribute. So that should be it. That's our input. And then we can just copy and paste this and basically do it for description. descr, and this will be tied with descr. Alright, that goes our form. And then now let's just try to do the button right here. So the button would be something similar to this. It will be another row by itself, and we will justify the center, of course, but it would be just a button itself, and then it will have its own column by itself. So I'm just going to say column sm. It will take the entire 12 column in here. Alright, so this one would be a button. So input, and I'm just going to give it an ID, say vaccine type submit, something like that. Okay, and so name is equal to vaccine type submit as well. And put some class, use some Bootstrap building. It's a button, and it's a button dash primary. Okay, and then let's put a value in here, and we're going to come back to that in a second. For now, let's just say th. We'll come back to that later on. And then let's just put type, because it would be type submit. Let's just put that for now. Alright, now let's see how it looks. We coded so many things just to see if it's going to show up or not. Alright. Let's go back to our thing, and if I click add, that should bring that page. It didn't. It got some error. Let's see what that error is. So here it's fussing about, let's go look at the error in here quickly. Invalid property DESCR, okay. Which is true. There is no property called this DSCR. Actually, it is called description. It's spelled out IPTION. I think so over here. So it's going to look at the actual ORM, and I think that is spelled out description. That's why it's fussing. Okay. Alright, so that's that. Let's go ahead and save that. Go back, come here, let's refresh. Alright, not bad. So there's a name, there's a description. And of course, if I hit submit, it'll tell me you gotta fill it out because I made that a required field. Doesn't look too bad, it looks okay. Let's go back and do certain things. For example, when it's add, this is fine. But when it's edit, they should not be able to edit the name because that's a primary key. So let's go back here and let me see if the edit is working. If I click on edit, and it does bring back the data, but we should not be able to edit this. And also it would be nice to say add versus edit based on what we're clicking. So let's get to that. Alright, in order to do that, we need to add some logic here. So let's see how we're going to do this. What we're going to do is, you see, when there is, this is only valid when it is add. So one way to do that is add a conditional statement. So there's a way you could say something like if equals, and there we're going to say something like add a condition, and the condition would be, hey, if this vaccine type dot name is equal to null. That means when we do for add, we're going to send a empty vaccine type, and the name would be null. So in that case, we're saying that in that case, go ahead, show this. Well, then the other case, we need to also take care of it. So in the other case, what we do is we're going to say if it's not equal to null, then we cannot have this show up as a type text. We still need that field, but we're going to call that a hidden so that we can pass it, and nothing else is required other than just tie that field up. And then when there is hidden, we also need to show the exact value of the field. So we don't want to use a label, but I'm going to copy this just for that. To save time, we can use this normal span object, and we don't need any of that control level stuff, all that stuff. But all we need is basically say that this is going to be a span, and when there is a data, we just wanted to show the vaccine type name right here. So there we're going to see this so that it shows the vaccine type name. And then we also need to put the if logic to say that, hey, only show that if this is not equal to null. So in a way, this two is for add, that will happen automatically, and this two is actually for going to be edit. And for each of these, the label will always going to be the same. So let's see if that's happening or not. Let's go back to vaccine type. If I click on add, and I should see this field, so I should be able to enter. which is correct. But if I click on edit, I should not be able to edit the field, but I can see the data. So that's basically what the intention was. All right, now let's try to decide this button based on the add versus edit. How are you going to do that? Well, what we could do is we could use again our time leaves. There's a value attribute, but we can use time leaves value. Here we could decide what we wanted to show. So here we can put a conditional statement that basically says, hey, if the, kind of like copy this guy right here. So here the conditional statement would be, hey, look, if this is not equals to null, if that's the case, then what happens is we're going to do something, otherwise we're going to do something else. So if this is not equal to null, then we put a question mark, then this would be an edit, right? So we're going to call that button an edit button. So let's copy this piece. That's going to call that an edit. Otherwise, we're going to call that an add. So it would be an add versus edit. Now, of course, we may not have these identifiers here. So let's go ahead and, oh, we do have add and edit. Good. Forgot about that. All right. So let's see if that's working. What that also going to tell us is based on this value, we can decide whether we have to do an add or edit in the backend. Let's go ahead and refresh this. And that should be an edit, which is correct. And then go back, and if you click on add, that should be an add. So that also works pretty well. Okay. Now let's get this thing functioning now. So what happens is we are saying that when the button is clicked, we're going to call this edit function right here. So how does that going to work? Well, what's going to happen is it's going to go back to the controller. Now we can definitely overwrite a method because we are calling it edit, but this edit is going to be a post because that's what we said, that it will be mapped, it will be post from the form. And we're not passing anything here. But one thing we definitely probably going to need is the request parameter with this thing, and also the model attribute. So instead of this, we need something like a model attribute. And the model attribute that we're going to send, which is nothing but the form's information, vaccine type, that, and that would be of type vaccine type. So we will automatically put that into that object, which is what we need. And then we keep the model as is, and we're also going to need something called a request parameter, where are we going to pass what type of button click was this. So this would be vaccine type submit. Alright, so that would be the request parameter, and we need an exact variable name for this. So that would be a string type. Let's put that variable in here. Alright, and let's try to import the necessary classes there. Import that, model attribute, import that. Okay, great. So now that all of the things are set, let's decide what's going to happen. Well, when everything is said and done, what we really wanted to do is return back to index, so that if everything's successful, brings back to the list of vaccine types again. So here we can just call the index function and press the model. So that way it just calls that, and whatever this does, this is going to fetch the list again and send it to render this page, which is good. The next thing we want to decide is whether it's an add or an edit. Well, first of all, let's something that we're going to need always, which is going to be the name. So let's get the name from the vaccine type. That's the first thing. And then we're going to also, when we're trying to insert in the record, we're probably going to need something like a current user. Well, right now we don't have any user login yet, so I'm just going to hard code my name. Alright. Then we need to also find out whether this is an add or an edit. So let's decide that. Let's add a boolean and say, is that an edit? The way we would know it is we actually would be basically saying something like this: edit dot equals to this parameter right here, vaccine type submit. Great. So that tells me if it is an edit or not. If is edit, we need to do something. And then if it's not, then we need to do something. Alright, so if it's an edit, of course we know that the vaccine type has to exist. So we need to fetch that vaccine type first from the database. So let's declare vaccine type here and call it update vaccine type. We don't want to mess it up. Equals to, we can take the repository and basically say that, hey, from the repository, go ahead, find me that. Again, using the same thing, find by ID, the name dot get. So this is the primary key, as we know. So using that, we're fetching that vaccine type. And then we're just going to set the new value, which is nothing but dot set description, which we can get it from there. This guy will have the description. That could be the updated description. That dot get description. Okay, and that's about it. The next thing we're going to do is, okay, now that because the name will already have the name. That's how we're getting it. Then we can set this vaccine type to that reference to whatever this thing is now. That way we can reuse this variable. Okay. Else this is going to be a brand new one. So the only thing we need to probably set is, which would be in here, all the vaccine type information for a brand new one, is we just need to set the created by there, and we can just say current user. Great. Now in both of these cases we also have to set the last updated by, so that's going to be outside because it's going to be common for both of them. So then when everything is said and done, what we could do is we could just say vaccine type, actually vaccine repository dot save will do the job. So we'll figure out whether it's an add or an edit, and it will save it based on that. And we're saving the vaccine type because that is the reference that is set properly during add versus edit. And that should be it. But what would be nice is, of course, right after this, we wanted to show some kind of message to say that, hey, my add went successfully or edit went successfully. And also, a couple of other good practice would be that we need to catch any error that happens. So what I'm going to do is just right click and surround with the try catch block. So if something bad happens, of course we're catching the exception, in which we're going to dump it into our stack trace, but we also would like to send the message back to the client. Now first let's see how we're going to send this message. Well, we can of course use our model to send it as an attribute. So right here, if you're on this line, most likely everything went fine. So we're going to add an attribute, and we're going to add a message basically that says success. Everything went fine, and we need to put some success message, of course. Now at this point, instead of hard coding it, well, let's hard code it for a second. Let's say that something like vaccine type, and then we put the name, which is the name, added successfully. Now what would be nice is if we could decide whether it was added or updated. So that would be the, of course it would be add attributes here. So this would also be nice if we can update this dynamically. And well, for now, let's just say updated successfully. Okay. And then if something bad happened, what we're going to say is we don't want to call it a success, we're going to call it an error. And then vaccine type this, of course it doesn't know what the name is, so we're probably just going to say vaccine type update failed. And let's say we just wanted to show the message, or message, whatever it came with this. There we go. Let's see how it works. So add and edit should work now. Let's go back here, and I'm gonna go start from scratch. Get the list. Let's go try to add one. And of course it's going to tell me, give me a name, and I'm going to say test and test description or something like that. Click and enter, and voila, I did add it. Actually, it's right here, as you could tell. And just to verify, let's go to a database and right click, select rows, and let me see if it shows up. It's running, and there you go. Did come right here, so as you can see it added. Let's see if it updated fine or not. So edit, the only thing I can update is the description, and say description test, and it did update it. Now of course I didn't get the message, so let's try to work on that a little bit. Alright, now as far as the message is concerned, there's a couple of problems here. One is I've hard-coded everything here, as you can see, all the messages and all the text, which is not a good idea. So what's the best way to do it, a good practice, is you wanted to get it from the message resource, of course, and the way you would want to do it is you wanted to get a response, a reference to the message resource. So let's add an auto-wired, and we're gonna stick a message source call message source. Oops. Okay, there you go. So let's import that class. There we go. Right. So the best way to do this would be like here, instead of hard coding this, you would see something like message source dot get message, and of course the code would be edit. I think that was the code, and here we'd have null for there's no parameters inside it, and then we need to put the locale, and let's put the locale here because it's going to be same. So this private static local, and then just say locale is equal to locale dot get default. Alright, so we're going to use this as the locale, so put that in here. So basically we're saying, hey, we're going to try to get that message. If that message happens to be equals to that we're not hard coding it, this is going to return the edit. Alright, similarly we would be it would be nice to set the message for add and edit. Now how are you going to do that? Well, let's start with something like this. So this, we want it to be the message, let's say. Okay. Now we could say that vaccine type update success. So here basically it says vaccine type, and here we want to parameterize this. So there we can parameterize this as well. So vaccine types, that's the name of it. You can put a double quote in here if you want. Updated successfully, and then you can put another one similarly. Let's say add success. This would be added successfully, and then of course we're going to delete it eventually. We're going to add a delete function, so let's just add one, since we're here, add one for delete as well. Delete success, so just say deleted successfully. Now what happens when there's an error, right? So let's just add a generic one for vaccine type failed or something like that. Update failed, a generic one. Or maybe more generic, let's just say instead of vaccine type, just call this error, just call this error. So we're going to say error occurred, and we're just going to put the message, something simple. Alright, so come back here and let's see if we can replace this thing. So this, first of all, let's replace the success, but we need to put the right message. So whenever there's an edit, let's start the message, declare the message right here. Message would be equals to message source dot get message. Let's just get all this and replace it. So first, let's initialize that with something like add success. Okay, add success, and here we need to pass the parameter, which is, so you pass it, it's basically a string array. The only value we have is the name. So basically we'll say that vaccine type this added successfully. Now this thing would change when for edit. So for edit, let's go ahead and say whatever we came up with, which is update success. And same thing, of course, it's going to go ahead and add that in there. And then all we need to do is simply say that it attribute this message when there is a success. And when there's a failure, of course, we need to get something like this. And our parameter here would be the exception, and this would just be say error. That would just say error occurred, whatever the error is. Okay, so now we take care of all this. There is no hard code messages anymore. Now we need to find out what we're going to show. How are you going to show that? Well, if you look at it, we are coming back to the index page, so we need to show those messages to the index page. So let's see how we can do that. Let's come back to index, and what we're going to do is, a good way to do it is probably we're going to show it at the top of this table right here. That would be the best thing that we could do. So let's go ahead and create another little section right here. I'm just going to copy this, And in this section, we're going to show a message. Alright, so the best thing to do would be to say div, and again we're going to use a conditional statement. Basically we're going to say that, hey, if you have an attribute called error, that you got an error, so make sure you use this specific class to show it. Alert danger. So it would be, this is a built-in like a red or pink type color from Bootstrap. And then whatever the message is, which would be nothing but that was used or that was passed using that attribute. So that would be that. And that's it. So similarly, we can just call, hey, if you have something like a success, and use that in a nice success message, and then of course your identifier would be this. Okay, let's see if that works. Alright, so let's go back here. So now what happens is, if we add one, test2, and click on add. Nice. So now it gives you the nice message, hey, it's added successfully. Then we go back to edit this one, old one, and then change that to another, whatever. Now I misspelled it, another. Edit, and there you go, it says updated successfully, and it got edited. So it seems to be working fine. Let's just hook the delete. So delete also would be fairly simple. So what's going to happen is delete, if you recall what we said is delete would follow some link like this, delete /n, the primary key. So we're going to go back to the controller, and we're going to try to copy something like this. It's going to be similar to this, and then it would be a delete, and that would have a name. That's good, and call that a delete, and that would also be good. That's got a delete in there, and then we don't need to check any of that stuff. The only thing that we're probably going to do is give a reference to the repository and just basically say, hey, vaccine repository, and actually get a reference to it. So you would need something like this. So let's get something like this, and no need to call it update, just call it vaccine type. So first of all, we need to find out, hey, if that vaccine type even exists. Okay, so if that exists, that means if that happens to be not null, you can either check that, or I guess we will catch exceptions, so we can just say vaccine type or vaccine repository dot delete. There's a delete option, and just put the vaccine type in there. There you go, that's the object, and then we'll try to delete. And after that, let's just put a nice success message, something like this. Of course, the success message would show up nicely as a success, and then we probably would show something like this. So we'll get it from the get message type. I think we had something called the delete success. There we go. There you go, delete success, go back, and here call it a delete success, and we'll put pass the name, everything is good, and it will be added. Now we can surround this whole thing again with try catch, and if something bad happens, similarly we can just add copy and paste this and say that an error occurred, something bad happened. And that should be it. Actually, let's just get generic exceptions. Okay. And then when we're set and done with delete, of course we are coming back to the index page. So let's fix that. There we go. Alright, so now we should have everything working. Come back here and let's just start with a fresh start. Load everything, and then let's try to delete. There we go. Deleted successfully, and it's gone, as you can see from the list. And it should be gone also from the database if we try to run it. Yeah, that is gone as well. So everything seems to be okay. So we can add another new one, one final test, a test description. Add, and it got added right here, and I'm going to try to go ahead and edit that just to put some 1 2 3 4. There you go. And it got updated, and then I try to delete, and it got deleted. Now you could see the error would also work. So if I try to refresh this, it will try to delete the same thing, but no value present. So you can see the error also working fine too. So that's about it, and thanks for watching. I will put the code in the GitHub, and I'll put the link in the description below. So now we got the entire module working, vaccine type. What's going to happen is next time what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and add some template to it, because now we're kind of repeating a lot of code, especially the headers and some of the pieces here. So we'll template this thing, and then we'll go on with the other modules like employees and vaccines. Thanks, bye now.